I still remember the sound of the glass. Not the clinking kind that comes with celebration, but the hollow sound it made when I set it down on the table. Careful, quiet, like I didn't want anyone to notice. My father had just raised his glass and smiled. The room was full of laughter. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for his words. "To the best child in this family," he said. People clapped. Someone laughed louder than the rest. Then he added, "And to Michael, our biggest burden." The room exploded with laughter again. Not cruel laughter, just careless, easy, comfortable. I smiled. I don't know why I smiled, but I did. And then I stood up, picked up my coat, and walked out. No one followed me. That was the night I finally understood something I had been avoiding my whole life. That being responsible does not mean being loved, and giving everything does not guarantee you belong. My name is Sarah, and for most of my life, I was the daughter who handled everything, until the night I finally said no. I grew up believing family came first. My father said it often, at dinner, in the car, anytime someone disagreed. "Family takes care of family," he would say, "and the strong ones carry the weak." I didn't know then that he meant me. I was the oldest child, the quiet one who finished homework early and cleaned the kitchen without being asked. My younger brother, Michael, was different. He was charming, funny, always had a story to tell. When he forgot his homework, my parents laughed. When I forgot, they sighed. "She knows better," my mother would say. "She's responsible." That word followed me everywhere. Responsible. It sounded like praise, but it felt like a job. By the time I was 16, I was already acting like a third parent. I reminded my father about bills. I helped my mother with paperwork. I made sure Michael got to school on time. No one asked me to do these things, they just expected it. And I learned early that being useful was how I stayed safe. When I moved out for college, I felt guilty. Not excited, not proud, just guilty. My mother cried the night before I left, not because she would miss me, but because she didn't know how things would work without me. "Call every day," she said. "What if something happens?" Something always did. A bill overdue, a form they didn't understand, Michael needing money. I was 20 years old and already the backup plan. After college, I started my own business, a small plumbing company. People were surprised. Some smiled politely, some asked if I was serious. I worked harder than anyone I knew. Long days, dirty hands, cold mornings. Slowly, the work grew. Clients recommended me, my crew respected me. For the first time, I felt something like pride. And with that pride came money. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to help. And help I did. At first, it was small things. A late electric bill, groceries, gas money. "Just this once," my mother would say. But just once became every month. Then it became bigger things. The mortgage, medical bills, vacation expenses. Michael still lived at home. He was 31 and figuring things out. That's what my parents said. He just hasn't found his path yet. Meanwhile, I paid for everything. And I told myself it was fine, that this was what family did. At family dinners, Michael played his role perfectly. He would pat my shoulder and smile. "Sarah works so hard," he'd say. "We're so lucky to have her." My parents nodded proudly. I believed him. I believed all of them. I thought love was quiet, that appreciation didn't need words, that one day it would balance out. I didn't know then that silence can also be a choice. One night, about 2 years before everything fell apart, I stopped by my parents' house after work. I had groceries in my arms. My boots were muddy. I was tired. As I stepped inside, I heard voices from the living room. Michael's voice, smooth, calm. She only helps so you'll love her more than me. I froze. She acts generous, but she hates it. She told me she's tired of paying your bills. That wasn't true. I had never said that. I stood there, heart pounding, listening as my parents agreed. She's always rushing off, my mother said. She never spends time with us. I realized then something important. They weren't confused. They were choosing the version of the story that made them comfortable. I left without saying a word, and I didn't stop helping. Not yet. For 2 more years, I paid and watched and waited. Every kindness I gave was twisted into control. Every boundary was called selfishness. Until the night of my mother's birthday, the night of the toast, the night I smiled and walked away. After the night I overheard that conversation, something inside me changed. Not loudly, not all at once. It was quiet, like a small crack in a wall you had leaned on for years, suddenly letting in cold air. I didn't confront Michael. I didn't confront my parents either. I told myself there was no point. If I walked into that living room that night, angry and hurt, they wouldn't have believed me. They already had a story in their minds, and I was no longer the hero in it. So I kept going, like I always had. The next morning, I woke up early for work. The sun was barely up. My body ached the way it always did after long days on job sites. As I tied my boots, I kept hearing Michael's voice in my head. She only helps so you'll love her more than me. I remember standing there, frozen, holding my laces, thinking, is that how they see me? Not as a daughter, not as family, but as someone trying to buy love. I shook it off, or at least I tried to. Life went on. Bills still needed to be paid, clients still called, pipes still burst at the worst possible hours, and my family still needed me. My mother called that afternoon. "Sarah, sweetheart," she said softly, "the water bill came higher this month." I didn't hesitate. I never did. "I'll take care of it," I said. There was a pause on the line. Not gratitude, not relief. Expectation. "Well, good," she replied. "I knew I could count on you." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. I knew I could count on you. Not thank you, not we appreciate you. Just confirmation that the role was still mine. At Sunday dinner that week, Michael was in rare form, laughing, storytelling, talking about plans he never followed through on. My parents leaned toward him, smiling, hanging on every word. When I mentioned a big contract I had landed, the room went quiet for a moment. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, already turning back to Michael. "So, what were you saying about that business idea?" I stared down at my plate. I had built something real, something solid, but in that room, it barely existed. Over time, the small things started piling up. Not dramatic moments, just tiny cuts. My mother would sigh when I said I couldn't come over. My father would joke about how I was too busy to care. Michael started making comments that sounded supportive, but weren't. "You know Sarah," he'd say, chuckling. "She thinks money fixes everything." Everyone would laugh, including me, because laughing was easier than explaining. I began to notice how conversations shifted when I entered a room, how my parents talked about money more openly now, as if it was already mine. "We're thinking of redoing the kitchen," my mother said one night. "Yours was done recently, right?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I saved up for it." She smiled. "That's good. You're so good at managing things." Managing things. Not living, not dreaming, managing. I tried quietly to pull back. Just a little. I didn't send money one month just to see what would happen. The phone rang within days. "Is everything okay?" my father asked. "You didn't forget the mortgage, did you?" I felt heat rise in my chest. "No, I just needed some time." There was silence, then a sharp breath. "Well," he said, "we're counting on you." Not asking, counting. After that, the guilt came fast and heavy. My mother talked about stress. My father mentioned his blood pressure. Michael sent a text. "Hey, don't let them worry. You know how they get." It was always framed as concern, never blame. But I felt it anyway. So I paid. Again. Inside, something else was happening. I started watching more closely. I noticed how Michael never paid for anything, how he never offered. If he bought groceries once, it was mentioned for weeks. "Michael helped us out," my mother would say proudly. When I covered 3 months of expenses, it was silence. Normal. Expected. I stopped telling them about my life. I didn't share work stress or successes. I learned it didn't matter. My value was already decided. The breaking point didn't come suddenly. It crept in, quiet, like winter. It was my mother's birthday, a big one. She wanted everyone together. So, of course, I paid. The catering, the decorations, even the dress she wore that night. I arrived late, straight from work. The house was full of people, warm lights, laughter. I stood near the wall, holding a drink, watching. Michael sat at the center of it all, relaxed, comfortable, like a king in his court. Then came the toast. My father stood up, glass raised. "To our wonderful son, for always being there, for being the pride of this family." Applause filled the room. I felt my stomach drop. Michael smiled and nodded. Then my mother turned to me. "And Sarah," tritely she said, for being here." Laughter. Soft, casual, like it meant nothing. Michael lifted his glass. "To Sarah, our little burden." That word, burden, it hung in the air, and something inside me finally gave way. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply placed my glass down, stood up, and walked out. No one followed. That night in my truck, I sat in silence, hands shaking, heart pounding. For years, I had told myself this was love, that sacrifice meant family. But sitting there alone, I finally admitted the truth. I wasn't loved. I was needed, and only as long as I kept giving. That was the moment the conflict became real, not just inside me, but between who I was and who they expected me to be. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the word again. Burden. It didn't echo loudly. It didn't shout. It just sat there, heavy, unmovable. By morning, I knew something had changed, not around me, inside me. The first thing I did was sit at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't finish. The apartment was quiet, no phone ringing, no requests. I stared at the wall for a long time and asked myself a question I had never allowed before. What happens if I stop? The thought scared me, not because I couldn't survive, but because I had been taught that stopping meant being bad, selfish, ungrateful, cold. I had carried those labels my whole life, like warnings taped to my chest. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I simply looked. There it was, the proof. Transfers, automatic payments, bills that weren't mine. I realized then how much of my life had been running quietly in the background for other people. I picked up my phone and called the bank. "I need to change my account details," I said. "All of them." The woman on the line paused. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. "Yes," I replied. "For the first time, it is." The call started that afternoon. I didn't answer the first one, or the second. By evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop. My mother left a voicemail. "Sarah, this isn't funny," she said. "We need to talk." My father sent a text. "Come by tonight. Enough of this." Michael messaged last. "Hey, you're overreacting. Just come home." Home. I stared at that word, and for the first time, I realized something painful. I had never really had one. I waited 2 days before going over, not because I was scared, but because I needed to be calm. When I arrived, Michael was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look surprised to see me. "Hey," he said, "thought you'd cool off by now." I placed my bag down and stood still. "We need to talk," I said. My mother rushed in from the kitchen. "There you are," she sighed. "You've been worrying us." Worrying. That word again. Soft, convenient. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply said the truth. "I'm not paying your bills anymore." The room went quiet. My father stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," I said slowly, "I'm done." My mother laughed nervously. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Of course you are. You always do." I shook my head. "No," I replied. "I won't." Michael finally sat up. "Come on," he said. "You can't just leave us like this." Leave. As if I had been the one resting. My father stood. "You owe us," he said firmly. "We raised you." I nodded. "And I repaid you. For years." My mother's face tightened. "So this is how you thank us? By abandoning your family?" The word cut deep, but it didn't break me. I took a breath. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm choosing myself." Silence. Not understanding silence. Angry silence. Michael scoffed. "You'll be back. You always come back." I looked at him. Not with anger, with clarity. "No," I said. "I won't." That was when the tone changed. My mother cried. My father lectured. Michael accused. "You think you're better than us. All that money went to your head." I listened, really listened, and I finally understood something. They weren't hurt because they loved me. They were scared because they were losing control. I stood up and picked up my bag. "I'm leaving now," I said. My mother rushed forward. "You can't just walk away," she pleaded. "We need you." I paused at the door. "That's the problem," I said softly. "You don't need me. You need what I give." Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I sat in my car for a long time before driving away. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was steady. The days after were strange, too quiet. No calls asking for help, no reminders, no guilt. For the first time in my life, my time belonged to me. And that scared me more than any confrontation ever had. A week later, the messages returned, this time sharper. "You'll regret this. You can't survive alone. You think a piece of paper from the bank can stop blood?" I didn't respond. I documented everything because I wasn't fighting anymore. I was protecting myself. The turning point wasn't the argument. It wasn't the silence. It was the moment I realized I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. I had said no, out loud, without apology. And even though I didn't know what came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never go back to being the responsible daughter at the cost of myself. After I said no, life did not suddenly become peaceful. That is something people don't tell you. They talk about boundaries like they are doors you close and walk away from, clean, simple. But for me, it felt more like standing in the middle of an empty room after a storm, not sure what was broken, not sure what could be saved. The first week was the hardest, not because of my family, but because of the silence. No one was calling, no one needed anything. I woke up each morning with a strange feeling in my chest, like I had forgotten something important. Then I would remember. I hadn't forgotten. I had finally stopped. I kept busy. Work helped. My crew noticed something different about me. "You good?" one of them asked one afternoon as we packed up. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." And for the first time, I meant it. At night, though, the memories came. Little moments. My mother's hand on my shoulder when I was young. My father teaching me how to check the oil in a car. Michael laughing at the dinner table. I didn't hate them. That surprised me. I wasn't angry. I was sad. Sad for what we could have been if love hadn't come with conditions. 2 weeks after I cut them off, my mother showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole. She looked smaller than I remembered. For a moment, my hand hovered over the lock. Old habits die slowly. I opened the door, but I didn't step aside. "What do you want?" I asked gently. She sighed. "I just wanted to see you," she said. "You didn't answer my calls." I nodded. "That was on purpose." She looked hurt. "I raised you better than this." There it was, the old script. I didn't argue. "I'm not discussing money," I said calmly, "and I'm not going back." Her face tightened. "So you're really choosing this life?" she said, looking around my small apartment. "Alone?" I met her eyes. "I'm choosing peace." She stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "You'll regret it," she said softly. Maybe I would, but regret felt lighter than resentment. After that, I stopped opening the door. Not out of fear, out of respect for myself. I started therapy. It felt strange at first, talking about things I had never put into words. "I don't know who I am if I'm not needed," I told the therapist one day. She nodded. "That's common for people who grow up responsible too early," she said. Responsible too early. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Slowly, I learned new habits. I rested without guilt. I spent money on myself without explaining. I said no without rehearsing. Some days were easier than others. Some days I cried in the shower where no one could hear. Healing, I learned, is not quiet. It is just private. Michael tried once more. A long message. Apologies mixed with blame. "You didn't have to go this far. We were just joking. You know how Mom is." I read it once. Then I deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I didn't need to carry it anymore. Months passed. My parents stopped calling. Not because they understood, but because they had no reason to anymore. That hurt too, but it also told me the truth. One evening, I sat on my couch, lights low, rain tapping against the window. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love meant sacrifice, the one who thought being strong meant being silent. I wished I could reach back and tell her something. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to be loved without earning it. The resolution wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was acceptance. Accepting that some people can only love you when you are useful, and that walking away does not make you cruel. It makes you honest. It has been a year now. A full year since I stopped being the responsible daughter everyone depended on. A year since I chose myself. Sometimes that still feels strange to say. There are days when the quiet feels too quiet, when I catch myself reaching for my phone, about to check in, about to ask if they need anything. Old habits don't disappear easily. They fade slowly, like echoes. I still think about my parents, not with anger, not even with blame, just with a kind of distant sadness. I wonder if they ever sit at the table and notice the empty chair, if they ever think about the way things used to be, if they miss me, or only what I provided. I don't have the answer to that, and I've learned that I don't need it. Michael never reached out again. For a long time, that hurt more than I expected. But then I realized something important. If someone only shows up when you are useful, their absence is not a loss. It is clarity. My life is quieter now. Smaller, maybe, from the outside. But inside, it feels full. I cook meals slowly. I rest without apology. I make plans that don't revolve around fixing someone else's problems. I am learning who I am when no one is leaning on me. And it turns out, I like her. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I regret walking away from my family. I always pause before answering, because the truth is not simple. I regret that it had to come to that. I regret that love became a transaction. I regret that I waited so long to protect myself. But I do not regret saying no. What I've learned is this: being responsible is not a life purpose, sacrifice is not the same as love, and family should not feel like a debt you can never repay. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to set limits. You are allowed to choose peace, even when others call it selfish. If you are listening to this and you feel tired all the time, if you are the one everyone relies on, if your worth feels tied to what you give, please hear this. You do not have to earn your place. You do not have to break yourself to keep others comfortable. And walking away from harm does not make you heartless. It makes you human. I was the responsible daughter for most of my life, and I'm proud of the strength that took. But I am even prouder of the moment I finally said no, because that was the moment my life truly became my own.